All right. So I came here to do magic tricks. And every time I do a magic trick, I want you to go, oh, and ah. Okay? Okay. Oh, look at that. Oh, wait, you're seeing my personal stuff. All right, hold on. Let's close that. Let's close that. VS Code. So, while I'm getting this thing up and running, I like to tell dad jokes. Did you know that about me? Yes. You did. Oh wait, that's not the wrong thing. So how do functions break up? They stop calling each other. Here we go. All right. Okay, font. Something like that. That's a good size font, yeah? What? Oh. And clearly I'm not prepared because I really wasn't planning on doing this. But let's see. Localhost. No. 5173 shop. Yes. All right. Ah, good. But that's nothing magical yet. Okay, so for my first magic trick is I want to show you this app. It's a kind of a demo app, nothing really that exciting. You know, there is like some menus here. There's a shopping cart, a number of items. It shows one item. If you do hello from Qwik, it prints the console log. You can increment and decrement things here. There is a shopping cart. If I hit buy, then you can see now I have 2 items in the shopping cart, and it says it has a travel mag now in there. And there's a clock that runs over here and updates itself. Okay, so that's the background. Let me show you the magic trick. So network tab. Let's go show JavaScript. Now, this is running in Vite in dev mode, and Vite sends a bunch of things. So I'm going to say, show me everything but Vite. And my first magic trick is that there is no JavaScript. Okay. So actually, before I go, I should kind of introduce myself. So first of all, hi, I'm Misko. You probably know me as the guy who did Angular and AngularJS. I don't know how many people have used that. Nice. All right. Do what? Too bad. Okay. And I'm working on this new thing called Qwik. And Qwik is a new kind of framework that is very different from everything else you've used. If you used all the other frameworks, they kind of work the same. The syntax is different, but they work the same underneath underneath it all. Qwik works very, very different underneath it all, but it looks very familiar, like it's intentionally done this way. So if you're actually a React developer and you look at Qwik, you're like, oh, it's very familiar, like it's everything the same. But the way it works is very, very different. And the first magic trick that Qwik knows how to do is to basically show you, hey, there is no JavaScript and yet things happen. So let's try to say hello from Qwik. When I click on this, notice code shows up. But the only code that showed up is literally just console.log, nothing else. Wait, how do I get the console to be up here? Okay, perfect. If I click on here, notice that the only thing that showed up is console.log because the system looked at it and said, well, you're asking me to say console log, and so that's all I'm going to do. So let me show you the source code to this. So shop, okay, so these are shop, and you can see there's a whole bunch of components over here. And let's open up the greet component. And the greet component, notice it just says console log, whatever you see over here. And so that's the only code that shows up. As a matter of fact, if I do console.log render greet, this particular greet, if I go to terminal, will show up. Let's see, I think look at it. Okay, here we go. So it renders on a server, so then the render greet shows up on a server. But if you go and click on a client, you know, it says hello, but the actual component never showed up. So Qwik knows how to look at your code and say, you know what, all this other stuff you wrote, I've executed on a server, it doesn't need to run on the client, so I'm not going to send it to the client. And as a matter of fact, in this particular case, the only thing that Qwik sends is this function. But wait a minute, this function is actually embedded inside of other code, and so Qwik knows how to extract the function, make it importable, and then do this particular magic trick. Okay, thank you. Okay, now, the thing is, this function is relatively easy to extract, right? Because if I did something like this, I'd say export const Qwik equals, like that's easy to do. And the reason why it's easy is because this function has no closure. Normally when we have functions, they close over variables, right? So let's look at a more realistic example, which is the counter. And in the case of a counter, we have a button that goes and increments the count. And notice, if I try to extract this function like this, export const Qwik equals, it's not going to like it, right? Because it says, hey, this count stuff, what happened to it? So that doesn't work. But yet, our button works just fine. It goes and performs the operation. And notice that, let's do this again. Notice the plus downloads just a piece of code for incrementing the code. It then downloads the framework itself in this particular case. And then there's this build thing that disappears. And then the minus actually shows up as a separate thing. Now, I know what you're thinking at this point. You're saying, well, wait a minute. Doesn't that mean that every time I interact with a page, I have to wait for a network request, and therefore that might be slow, especially on a mobile network? Well, this is how this works in dev mode. In production, it actually works a little different. What happens in production, let's go to our site. Oh yeah, I have no internet. Guest. Let's see. What is it? It's come dream with us, exclamation. Okay, at first when I heard they told me the password, I thought it said come drink with us, and I'm like, what are you, a bunch of alcoholics? But I misheard it. This makes more sense now. Okay, so here is our website. And I wanted to show you that in the real website, there is a service worker, which is running right here. That's right here. And what this service worker does, it immediately goes and prefetches all of these files that are necessary for the running of the application. And these files get automatically prefetched so that when you go and interact with the page, it's a cache hit. So when I do an operation, let's go to network tab. If I, the network's empty. If I go and I click on something, all of these files, if you look at the times, they're showing super low times, like 3 milliseconds. And that's impossible to have any kind of network in 3 milliseconds. And the reason why it's showing 3 milliseconds is because the service worker already prefetched it and the service worker is responding. So even if I disabled the network, it would still work because the service worker went and prefetched. I mean, this is another interesting thing because that's not how you normally think about working with your application, because the way you normally think about it is that loading and execution is the same thing. In Qwik, loading the code into the cache is independent from actually getting it from the cache into the V8. Those are two separate steps. So we talk separately about eagerly downloading the code, but lazily executing it. And that's a trick that most frameworks don't know how to do. But anyways, let's go back. Oh yeah, but before we do that, let's talk about these files over here. How did the system know how to do this? Well, what if the system can observe your interaction? Oh, come on, you're gonna make me log in now? Hold on, we can do this. Maybe I have a separate profile that I'm already logged in. Profile, Qwik, inside, here we go. Here I'm already logged in. And we can go to Qwik Builder, here we go. And so what this thing does is it observes how the users are actually using the application, and it keeps statistics, and basically knows, for example, that if you go and interact with a particular symbol, so that hash, I know it's a little low, small to see, let me see if I can make it bigger. That shows that if that symbol is needed, then there is an 87% chance that this other symbol is needed. And so Qwik uses this information then to create bundles. So for example, this is a relatively large bundle that has lots of code inside of it. Qwik basically looked at it and said, I always see that all this code is needed together, so I'm going to put it in the same bundle. And then not only do we download all this code, but we then can go and tell the service worker to download these bundles in a specific order. So a button, so if we go to our page, for example, again, a button that is a search button that's used a lot is going to be prefetched first, and maybe a button like explore the docs, which is not used very often, is going to be later in the. It's still going to be prefetched, but it's going to be later. And so that means that you can go and interact with your application much faster because we actually order the list of these bundles that we can do. Most frameworks, because of hydration, require fully downloading all the code on the current page and fully executing it before you can interact with anything. This thing can sort the order and automatically do this and do this. Now, the important point is every framework will say, we know how to lazy load. They're not necessarily wrong. The interesting bit is that in Qwik, you get lazy loading without moving a finger. There's nothing you have to do. It's just how it works out of the box. Okay, so let's go back to the shopping cart and let's talk about this. So this particular button here, as you can see, knows how to, is the microphone on? It's kind of cutting in. It knows how to capture the state of the system and execute it. And then again, you're going to notice that the render part, this part here, executes on a server, and so you can see it executing on a server right here, but it never shows up on the client. The render client just never shows up on a client. Well, thank you. Now, the important thing to kind of realize is look at the shopping cart right here. So there's a buy button, and the shopping cart is pretty far. That means that if you look at our application, the application has a shopping cart state, which is a top-level component, and it takes that state and passes it down to cart, and then passes it down to the shop, which then has the buy button, right? And so you have this tree where when you have something that's far apart, like a button, the buy button and a cart, you have to put the common state super high up, which means that if I push the buy button, I have to go and mutate the state in the root component, which means that component has to be downloaded. And then, because it's a root component, it will cause a re-rendering of everything below it, right? And re-rendering means all the code has to be present, too. So let's see what is needed to hit the shopping cart button. So here, nothing's here, no code. I hit buy. The first piece of code I have to download is the listener that pushes the code into the shopping cart, right? So I get a hold of the state, and I push data into the shopping cart. The framework shows up, and the framework says, you know what? I also need to update the number. Wait, what? Use lexical scope count file. No, why is the negative number? Wait, what? Sorry. By. Okay, and now the number is updated. Okay, so the piece of code that pushes the travel mark shows up. Then the framework shows up. That's the build. Then the JSX associated with the shopping cart only, because if I expand it, this JSX is right here. And why is the -1 button showing up? Did I click it? Whatever. This one shouldn't be here. I'm not sure why it's showing up. But the point is, the other components didn't show up, right? The root component that contains the state, or all of the components underneath it, which is basically this whole demo, none of that stuff showed up. And that's a trick that I don't believe any other framework can do, because when a data flows through the system, at the very beginning, all frameworks require that all the components are executed at least once, and then frameworks that use signals, such as Solid.js, can do this trick. But it's already too late. They already downloaded and executed everything. Whereas here, we never download and execute any of these things. Now, I have one more thing that I like to show, and I have this clock on the bottom. And what I want to show you about this clock is that the code doesn't show up until I scroll the clock into the position. The clock knows how to do this. So, and how does it know how to do this? Well, if you go to the clock, it simply says, I have a state, and I need to be updated myself. So use visible task is kind of like use effect, but it only runs on a client. And in this particular case, it basically tells you that I'm only going to run if I become visible. If I don't become visible, then there is no point in running. And this is just a natural way of writing code. It's just like you would use effect. You have to use visible task. It's very similar. And then you have, of course, the JSX associated with it, right? And in the case of a clock, the only thing that showed up was the effect associated with it, right? The framework, and for some reason, the button for subtracting the value. Why is this showing up? I have to look into this. But even with that extra file showing up, it's still like miles ahead of a typical framework that downloads everything. And so I think this is kind of cool that you can, without kind of any sort of effort, right? Without trying to lazy load anything, just in a normal way of writing components, you end up with this particular behavior. Now, I want to show you though one more thing, because Eric was talking about this idea of, am I a front-end or back-end developer? And I really want to squash the two ideas together in a way that you have never seen before. PHP developer. All right. So here is our console log that prints hello over here, right? And so if I go and I click this button, I will see that it says hello as I'm clicking the button, right? So far, nothing's exciting. Now, imagine that I have something that's expensive. So I'm going to say console log expensive. Okay, just bear with me. Imagine it's expensive. And so obviously, if I click, it's going to say hello and expensive. But what if this expensive thing only runs sometimes? Like, let's say math random 0.5. So now it only runs sometimes, right? And so now I have a problem that, like, I click this button and I've downloaded the code that I don't need, right? If I look at the code that's associated, it shows expensive because it's behind that. So let's say I wanted to lazy load this piece of code. So if I wanted to lazy load, all I have to do is turn this into a function, right? So that in itself doesn't do anything, right? And so now I have to invoke the function like this. And so if I want to lazy load it, all I have to do is wrap it in a $sign. Basically, everywhere you see a $sign, you are lazy loading code. And it's not like you can forget to put down $sign. The system complains, right? So it's not like you can say like this. It's not a valid piece of code. So just by wrapping something in a $sign, notice we're going to have this behavior that, hey, this hello now showed up without the expensive part. And if you look at the source code, you'll see that where the expensive part was, we have a dynamic import. And so if I click again, now the code showed up. Now the expensive part showed up as a separate piece of file. So lazy loading in Qwik is very effortless. And oh, by the way, just because this now got lazy loaded, Qwik Insight can now kick in and look at the statistics of what people actually use, and based on that decide whether or not it's worth to bundle it together or not, and in which order it should be downloaded, and all that stuff just happens automatically. That's everything hiding behind a $sign. So let's do another even cooler trick. How about it's expensive not in the terms of size, but maybe in terms of computation. And I want to move this work over to the server. So now when I click the button, the hello shows up on a client, but the expensive part shows up on a server. All just because you've put server $sign. You pinned the function to the server. And so now you should be thinking to yourself, like, wait a minute, this is very muddy. Like, I'm sometimes on a server, sometimes on a client. Like, my application runs on a server, but then runs on a client, and it's just seamless without even thinking about it. And it's not just this. I can, for example, do weird things. Like, for example, I can say value equals 10 here, and I can say value. And this value is declared on a server, then goes to the client, and then when I click the button, it says expensive 10 because it came back from the client, right? So you can capture things inside of this particular bit. So let me actually move this function up a little bit, and let me show you another trick. Option, here we go. Magic. Okay, so we have our function here, and so far it just prints console log. But what if I will turn it into function? What if I turn this function into a generator, and then in here let's have a for loop. Let's go from to 10, and let's yield I, and then delay 1000 milliseconds. Of course, we have to create a delay function. Delay time. Come on, autopilot, you're gonna help me? No? Okay, what is it? Return new promise. No, what are you doing? Promise. Resolve is, no, how does it, it's a closure that takes resolve that says set timeout, which runs resolve in time. Something like this. Okay, so now we have a generator that goes and updates the stuff, and let's say do const text equals use signal. Well, actually, it would be, sure. Let's start with an empty thing, and let's just print it here. Okay. Yes, and now we have to do const. Wait, what is? Oh, the delay. Yes, sorry, thank you. Sorry, thank you. Yes. So now we get stream, and now we can do, what's the syntax? For await const data in stream. Is that the off? And then we do text dot value plus equals data. And why is this not happy? Must have, yes, async. What am I doing wrong here? Oh yeah, I have to await the magic. Thank you. I was just checking if you're paying attention. All right, let's see. So now, look at that. I am streaming data from the backend. Thank you. How am I doing on time? You can go out forever. I think I promised them half an hour, but I'm going to pause here because I think I showed off all the kind of main things, and I'm going to see if people have questions. First of all, how many people have heard about Qwik before tonight? Oh, because Giorgio's awesome, right? Okay. But questions, what can I answer for you?
I have a question.
Yes.
You showed the server thing. Now it's a very silly question, probably.
Yeah.
You have the server there,
Yeah.
so this means that you can have all the routes, databases now on Qwik.
Yeah.
So this was gonna replace other frameworks or something.
Yeah, so we have both Qwik and Qwik City. So Qwik is like replacement for like your normal framework like React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, whatever. And then Qwik City is for the meta framework like Next, Svelte Kit, Solid Start, etc. So we have both parts of it. Both of them are running, yes. There was a question behind, yes.
I would ask where are stored the statistics by the user usage? The real question is, can I share these statistics between pods?
These statistics are shared right now. We have, this is kind of what we call labs, which means we're just trying this out. It's kind of in the alpha state, the statistics. But as of right now, we're sharing it for, we have a database in the cloud that you can send data to. The data we send across is completely anonymous. The only thing we know is the SHA, which is this hash, right, you see over here, and time delay since previous SHA. So there's some like 3 different time delays that we keep track of, and we send this to the database, and the database doesn't store individual things. It only stores aggregate statistics. So there's no way to track individual user. We can only talk about overall the system. The code is open source, and so if you don't trust us with the data, not that you can do much with it, you can host your own.
No, the real question it was if I can share between instance of server.
Yeah, so this data is used for making a build. So this is not a runtime thing. It's when you're making a build, it's at that time that you make different kinds of builds. Because you want to solve answer 2 questions. The question 1 is, I don't want to have waterfalls, and therefore I want to put things that are needed together to be together in the same file, right? So that is answered basically what I showed you here with this correlation matrix. The second part you need to solve is, okay, now that I have these bundles, in which order should I download the bundles for a particular route, right? And so all of this information is collected here, and then that information is used to make the next build better.
Have a question?
Yes.
So what is the name of the technique behind loading just the piece of JavaScript that I need on the front end? And if it's common, why other frameworks are
not doing it? Okay.
not doing it, yeah.
So the technique, we named this technique, it's called code extraction. I wrote an article on this blog, builder.io. There's an article. Here we go. What if I code extraction? Here we go. There's a nice article that I kind of explain. There are other frameworks that are doing it in a much simpler way, but I am not aware of anybody doing it to the level that we are doing it. So for example, Next.js does this trick where you create a get static props, and as long as nobody's referring to the get static props, nobody's actually calling it directly, it gets tree shaken away, right? So it never gets shipped to the client, but the server can call it because the server build is without the tree shaking, right? Enabled. And so that's a simplified version of code extraction. What we have here is basically code extractions on stereos, where we use a marker and then marker is the $sign. And so whenever the compiler sees a $sign, the compiler says, oh, you want me to extract this to a separate file. And so it does this automatically. So in a dev mode, it moves it to a separate file, but then in the production, we have the quick insight statistics, and we can put them together based on how the real world usage actually is. And keep in mind that the amount of JavaScript we download is significantly less than an equivalent other framework, because if you look at this page, the demo page I was giving you over here, most of this HTML never has to re-render. And because it never has to re-render, the code never has to be shipped to the client, right? So in a normal framework, all of this HTML that is needed to build up this particular page would have to be shipped to the client, right? Because there might be a listener somewhere and we need to know about it, and that's what hydration is. Here, we only download the component if it has to be re-rendered. And it only has to be rendered if there is a structural change. So for example, in the case of a shopping cart, when you hit the buy button, this is a structural change because we have an extra row. So this requires us to download the JSX associated with this component. Not the child components, just this component, or parent component, just this component itself, right? But in the case of the button like you see over here, the JSX is never actually downloaded because it's not a structural change. It's just an update to attributes. And because it's just an update to attributes, we don't need the JSX. We know exactly what's connected to what, and we can just do it directly. Other questions? Who's going to start using this? Who thinks this is like amazing and it will solve your problems? Yeah, one person, two. All right, good, good, good. So if you have, okay, let me show you one more demo. Actually, come to think about it. Okay, one more demo. This is our landing page. This is Builder.io. This is the wonderful company I work for. And I wanted to show you, let's see. So let's go to performance, and let's load this particular page with, this is actually running an older version of Qwik. So give it a second. Come on, do your magic. Now, because we are a visual CMS system and we have this amazing tool called mitosis, we can generate the same exact page, but we can render it using Next.js. So this is the same exact page. So one-for-one comparison, no difference. And now this is running Next.js. And so let's have a comparison between Next.js and Qwik in terms of the amount of JavaScript we download, and the amount of JavaScript that has to execute, or anything else you want to look at. So let's see. Come on, do your profile. Come on, do your magic. Okay, so it took 420 milliseconds to get the page running. And if I zoom in here, let's see. So the page, oh, come on. How do you use this thing? Okay. Where am I even? Oh yeah, I see. Okay, I have to close this. So I'm looking at the first 2 seconds of the life of the page, right? So let's look at the first 2 seconds of the life of the page here. Okay, 71 milliseconds. of JavaScript. Huge difference, okay? But you should really be looking at what's happening over here. First of all, the page showed up much earlier. But look at the, I guess the flame chart is what you want to see. How do I do flame chart? Cold tree. Oh, there we go. So notice that the flame chart is pretty empty. Whereas if you look at the flame chart here, notice how thick it is, right? This flame chart, what you're looking at over here, that's hydration happening. And you know, this is a modern CPU. Again, imagine mobile device. This would be multiple seconds, and it's not unheard of on a mobile device to take 30 seconds for the page to come up. So if you want a page that is instant on, nothing is faster than just pure HTML, right? And a demo I've showed you is pure HTML. Nothing is showing up here, just pure HTML, and yet the page is interactive. You can't beat this, right? The code shows up later, and the code that's showing up is specific to the operation you want, right? So if I'm a user and I want to click the buy button, why download the menus, all the other things, maybe some footnotes over here or clock or whatever? The only thing I really need is the code behind the buy button and the code to update the shopping cart. Nothing else. Nothing else should show up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so if I was to run this thing through, let's see, page speed. Is it page speed? Let's see. So that's the Qwik version going through page speed. And let's do another page speed. And this one is render equals next. So let's see the difference in page speed scores. Come on, it's going to be a second to come up. But there, usually we get around 90 in the Qwik's site, and we get like 40s. Oh, look at only 86. 90 is a magical thing when you become green. Why is it 86? Okay, I'll have to investigate later. But let's see what Next.js comes on. It comes at 49, right? So it's a huge difference in performance. And you know, I love the comments that Next.js gives you. It's like, oh, you're executing too much code. It's like, yeah, I know, but what am I supposed to do about it? Look, main thread work took 8 seconds on the main thread, right? And so this is kind of the motivation and the thing how Qwik is different. One of the things that is, because Qwik pages are HTML first, you don't really have to think about SEO, right? Because, I mean, there's still stuff to think about it, but like the rendering is not something you have to think about because it just comes out of the box. Other questions?
Last question.
You're still using JSX on the as the language, right?
Yes.
It's still JSX.
Yes.
So it still allocates a huge amount of elements and stuff on the server side to render that HTML.
You mean VDOM?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of, not really. There's a special renderer that runs, but that's a very complicated topic to get into.
I knew it was tough, so maybe it was. I just wanted to get. Did you take a benchmark between the response time, so the number of requests per second on a Next versus Qwik comparison?
Right. On a server, I don't remember the number, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm pretty sure that we are either the same speed or slightly faster, but it should be in the vicinity.
More or less in the same.
Right, but most pages are SSR'd, right? Sorry, SSG'd.
Yeah.
And so moot point, right? Most people just put this stuff in the CDN cache, and so it doesn't matter how long it takes to generate. But I want to show you one thing, which is Dream Demo Qwik, which was written by yours truly, Giorgio, in the back here. What do I this? I know. Hold on. Can I get English here? Okay. Sure. Don't get me started. That was the most useless thing that EU did. Like, they made my experience horrible. Like, I have to click now all the time on some buttons. Sorry. Okay, so here is a demo page. And so what I want to show you is, you see these links, these little boxes here? All of these boxes are coming out of a separate edge worker. So this is a separate edge worker as this. So they all are basically rendering portions of the page. And then these portions of the page are assembled together as a micro front end into a one cohesive application. Now, the thing you can do is imagine you have the front end, and the front end basically says, okay, I want to like do Amazon level personalization. So I can't cache the whole thing, right? But a request comes in and you're like, oh, I need the menu. But everybody's getting the same menu. I can just talk to the CDN and like cut and paste a piece of HTML string that's the menu. And this is exactly what's happening over here, right? And then you come across the shopping cart and you know like, well, you need to know how many items you have in a shopping cart. So in that case, I have to do full rendering. But like, oh, I need to show a hero image. But there's only like 400 hero images to choose from because I'm only running X number of campaigns, right? So again, I just need to like go to the correct CDN URL and like cut and paste the HTML over there. And the same thing for product or comments or anything else. And so in this particular way, you can have high level personalization and at the same time not pay the cost of SSR rendering. Because SSR rendering is kind of expensive. The only way to really do efficient SSR rendering is to do string concatenation. And it's something that we have plans long term with Qwik, but we're not there yet. Okay. Happy to chit chat later. I think I'm out of time of questions, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll be around wondering. I'm a friendly guy. Oh, I do have to finish every single one of my thing with a joke. And so, you know the T-Rex, the dinosaur? Yeah. Why can't T-Rexes clap? Because they're extinct. Okay, good night.
Thank you.